This is Recruiting Unfiltered. He's a Division I player.
Committed for suicide, basically.
We're going to cover the full gamut. Now, roster limits actually become a detriment.
High school athletes need to really open their eyes.
We are here to talk everything recruiting. Recruiting Unfiltered. Hey guys, welcome into Recruiting Unfiltered. I am Sean Salisbury, along with with the Executive Director of NSR, Larry Perrin, and we're grateful to be here on Recruiting Unfiltered. Larry, welcome in, man. It's a time when I know this is a passionate subject for you when we're hitting on today, and we get to roll through it with passion and feverish when it comes to recruiting timelines. First off, the perception of the recruiting timeline by people you run into.
Well, thank you, Sean, and good morning. Glad to be here. And you are right. This is something that I am passionate about. The recruiting timeline. So many people believe in, especially the D1 world, that college coaches can't communicate with my softball player until September 1st of their junior year. You know, they think the recruiting begins when that happens. Recruiting has been going on for 2 or 3 years prior to that for these young athletes that are getting contacted on September 1st to get to the offer, okay? It doesn't begin there, okay? The evaluation process, you know, where coaches are looking to see if these kids can play at their level, if they have they get their metrics and their measurements and all of these things, you know, that all happens at camps and stuff prior to the communication date. Those coaches are building their boards for those classes early. That September 1st or June the 15th, in some cases in other sports, is the day when offers are given, okay? It does not start the process. That process has been going on for some time.
So with that in mind, I'm getting recruited by, NSR's talking to me, or I'm thinking about recruiting with my family. And I say, well, it's all the same, D1, D2, D3, all that. They can't talk to me until before my junior year, the summer before my junior year. What's the response?
Yeah, that's false. If it's Division II, Division III, NAIA, and JUCO, they can communicate to you anytime. They don't have any guidelines on them as far as communications go, like Division I does. And these coaches are trying. That's by design. They are wanting to allow these smaller level schools, these lower level schools, to develop these relationships with these kids and potentially pick these kids up as recruits. They want them to develop these relationships, to show them the campus, to get them to buy into what they're offering at those levels. And many times young people don't get the conversations that they want on those contact dates. They need to fall back to those D2, D3, NAIA, and JUCO conversations that potentially they had prior to those communication dates becoming open.
Executive Director of NSR, Larry Perrin, joins, as always, as a co-host here on, and this is expertise by him, which is the case every week here on Recruiting Unfiltered. All right, Larry, I'm, we all see kids, whether it's our own or somebody else's, when they're young. And they're seventh graders dominating better than everybody, eighth graders, ninth graders. The balance of this perception of, like you said, oh, that's when they can start to talk to you, not when you should start to think about recruiting when it comes to not only guidelines, but the calendar and when you should get started. So when's a fair time when I see a kid? When should a kid, whether he's a baseball player, select player, whether you're a volleyball player, when's the time that we should start to say, be aware? It's time to get eyes on you.
Well, just keeping it real, man. The young ladies, the girls, they mature physically faster than boys do. And they start to reach their, you start to see them getting close to their peak levels in their freshman and sophomore years. And some even earlier in girls in eighth grade as well. So, that's one thing that we use as a guideline, is just where they're at physically. Are they, do they have the height? Do they have the wingspan? Do they have the
measurables, right? And
right.
What the par laid out, if you're a freshman, what it's going to look like 4 years from now.
Right. And in men's sports and males, freshman year, you start to see that picture coming into view a little bit more. But these young men, I've seen several. Listen, I played it at my college. I got to see Scottie Pippen when he came in as a freshman, and he was, 6 foot tall. And when he graduated, he was 6'9", and turned out to be a Hall of Fame NBA player. Men just mature physically later. And so, ninth grade, 10th grade, you start to really see them. You see the skill set. You see, maybe some metrics and measurables at that time, but you got to follow them through the process. But you have to also be able to project, is this young person based on genetics, based on, foot size, based on, the width from thumb to pinky, how are they going to finish out? So you have to kind of look at these little things to be able to make an educated guess on where they're going to be physically when they peak out.
Larry, let's say you're a college coach right now. I don't care what level it is, a college coach, and when I start sending you tape of my kid in the 7th grade, when do you take them serious?
Depending on the sport, again,
let's say baseball. Larry, 7th grade.
right.
He's sitting at 78 miles an hour as a pitcher. He got 3 pitch. You've watched him play in Little League, which seems a little bit invasive at times. I get that. It does. But the whole recruiting world's changed. Everything has changed. And the goalposts will continue to get moved. By the time we talk next week, it may be the same. We may have already moved them. So with that, when as a coach do you start to take this serious?
When you start seeing metrics that draw your attention. In baseball,
that pop,
you
right.
see exit speed, you see their whip of their bat, how fast their hands get through the zone. You see their basic mechanics that they're working with, and then potentially peek up there in the stands and see dad. If dad is 6'4", I'm paying attention to that kid in 7th grade. If he's got great mechanics and he's doing things the right way.
Is the NCAA got this right timeline-wise? If you're the director, are we doing it right?
Yes and no. I think they should be able to communicate a little bit more with the kids prior to, and it will help clear up the picture with a lot of families. I would like to see in softball. I'd like to see it move to the June the 15th, like NCAA football is. I think it would clear up the recruiting picture a lot more for these young people, and it would allow these young athletes to understand, now I see which pond I need to be fishing in a little bit sooner so they can focus on those areas.
Executive Director of NSR, Larry Perrin, co-host each and every week, and a very passionate subject for him. He's been doing this for a long time. Larry, why don't we? People get it. You and I know the answer, but let folks know who, because I've talked to a couple families recently that good player. They just don't understand what's going on because of the goalposts we talked about. So when you try to explain it, and we'll get to a few of these other things, but why isn't there a uniformity rule? And would you have one if you were running the NCAA? Why aren't we on the same so there's not all this gap between, why isn't D1 on the same page as D3? Why don't we have uniformity just like we do uniforms?
Right. I think the NCAA, this is just the Larry Perrin version of this, so it's nothing concrete. I do think that they're allowing the D2, D3 NAI to get and develop relationships with these young people much earlier. I think that's why they did away with the recruiting calendar for D2, to develop the relationships with these young athletes at an earlier age to kind of keep the playing field level. Again, it does. I would like to see more, I just think that the way that it's split up right now, we do get props to some D2, D3 NAI kids early. But does that dream of D1, does that need to be squelched earlier, or does it need to simmer more with these athletes? I don't know. That's a question that I can't answer. I'm not a big proponent of NCAA rules, I think they're missing the boat on a lot of things. But I do think that when they did away with the D2 the D2 calendar, I think that helped to level the playing field and get these kids some opportunities and allow them to understand that, if I'm not a D1 athlete, now I need to start talking to these D2 coaches a little bit earlier.
And is it, when you look at the parents or you look at the metrics or the measurables of a dad, like you mentioned, 6'4", 220, and the kid's an 8th grader or 9th grader, how often do you see, just for parents that are thinking, because we do have D1-itis in the world, and we just do, and I understand it, but it also we got to find a way, in our teaching and elevating people with the percentages or low D1, not to strive for great success, but to be able to allow these kids to keep playing. But let's say there's a freshman. How often do you see in all your years of recruiting and timelines and changes in sports, how often do you see a kid who's a freshman that if he was a senior but he's a freshman eligibility wise in high school, how often do you see a freshman football player that you say, well, right now if I was taking him now, he's a D2 player or a
Right.
D3 player, that you see transform into a D1 player in 3 years? How often do you see that?
It's not as often as you would think, because metrics and measurements and genetics will tell you the story kind of up front, and coaches look at the same things that I look at when I'm looking and evaluating a young athlete. There are always those late bloomers that come along, the Scottie Pippens of the world that, could potentially go from a D2 ceiling athlete to a D1 ceiling athlete in their senior year. Okay. But what's important in that kid's case is they still have to be involved in the process of recruiting early to get to that, even if that becomes an option for them, because these coaches will start to follow these kids. They want to see progression. Okay. They want current film. They want metrics and measurements updated often where they can see that progression, and where you can follow that kid and track them. And potentially, I had a kid in this last signing class that just was D2, 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 D2 all the way. And then all of a sudden he had a little growth spurt and found the weight room this summer before his senior year. And he totally transformed himself into a Division I athlete, and his skill set changed too. But he found a fire in him that also changed as well. Because he started getting recruited by D2s, and he saw the opportunity that he finally realized that he is a college athlete. And
did that part mental too? The stronger he got, the more confident he got too, correct? It's not just the physical side.
Absolutely.
All right, with that in mind and talking about this, and I think a lot of people skew it a little bit out there, not understanding, and you hit it. And so I want to project that forward. Is that a lot of folk think because D1 they can't talk to you a certain time before your junior year in the middle of the summer. What's June 15th? So why in the world they need to also know? But that doesn't mean that the pipeline doesn't go the other way. I can send them as much tape, they can look at it and view it. The contact is just personal contact with you. They can look at you as long as they want to, and you can flood them with stuff. You can keep doing. You just can't have contact with them, right? I think some think, well, can't send them anything till that time. That's not true, right, Larry?
That's not true. The coaches can initiate the contact with the athlete, those Division I timelines, but nothing says that athlete. I've had it happen to me many times where a coach will say, "Have him call me at 6:00. Here's my number." The kid can initiate the contact to the coach, and the coach can answer. And then they can exchange camp dates and that sort of thing to get the kid on campus where they can do the evaluation of them. And that happens a lot. It happens a lot. Now, the coach can't reach back out to the kid and start, having that conversation with them freely until the contact periods. But yeah, kids can send information. The process can start happening earlier. These boards, like I said at the beginning, we're in the 2027 class that's up right now. Those are the ones that are on the clock right now. 2027 is the kids that are juniors right now. Okay. if you're a 2029, you need to be doing things. You need to be proactive. You need to be getting on the boards right now. You do not need to wait until June the 15th between your sophomore and junior season to start being proactive. The more proactive you are, the earlier. Again, Sean, another pet peeve, this goes back to academics too. These coaches want to see the academic profile early. So we encourage our athletes to take the ACT or SAT early and often. Okay. A lot of times that they don't, it will be some curriculum that they've never seen before, but it allows them to start to prepare to maximize that score. Okay. And as you know, in so many sports, they're not head count scholarships. They're partials, and you'll need that financial aid money to blend. And that helps coaches kind of budget for that class as they move forward with them, in these minor sports.
Executive Director NSR and my co-host weekly, Larry Perrin, here on Recruiting Unfiltered. And with that, is there ever a point in time, Larry, through this? And I know with the coaches I talked to all these years, and you as well, and just run across them and getting their vision for it, I almost feel like at an early age, when these kids are freshmen and sophomores, I almost feel like the academic growth is more important to them early on, because you're still the development. If you're a 2.0 student and hadn't taken SAT or ACT as a freshman heading into your sophomore year, they initially have a bad thought about this because they don't want you failing out of school. They know when it gets to it, because if you're a coach, I'm just coming to me. We're a D1 athlete. We'll just use D1. You're both the same size, same metrics, same measurables. Both your parents are former athletes, all that. One's a 2.2 and one's a 3.9. One's got 30 on the ACT. One hasn't taken it. Where do you think I'm going to lean? I'll never forget when I'm at SC. We were sitting in our team room during the season. And my head coach at that time, Coach Tolner, and he was big on academics, as he should be. We were all in a big old meeting room, everybody. And I was one of those guys afraid to be a guy mentioned. So you go to school, right? My parents had preached that at a young age. But we were sitting in there, I'll never forget. He got the progress reports for everybody, as you do in colleges. It may have changed now with computers. I don't know if they have it on a piece of paper, but he stood up there and he started reading down the line. So-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. D plus F. I can't count on you. He's under scholarship. Okay. So there's this perception, and that was while they were in the building. So imagine what they go through, because obviously there's bonuses for these coaches with academics. There's a lot of things that go into it. Aside from the fact that most of them care what your life's going to look like, you have the greatest career ever. You're done in your mid-30s if you're fortunate. So with that, Larry, it feels to me like at an early start, the priority, you're limiting your options if you're a bad student or a lazy student, but a great athlete. It will eventually get you quicker than being a bad athlete and a great student. There'll still be money out there for you, even if it's just academic money down the road. So it's the process by elimination. Where's the conflict, right, Larry? And the conflict here is bad grades. Coaches turn their cheek quicker.
Absolutely, man. The concept of, hey, man, I'm such a good athlete, my grades don't matter. That might have worked in the 60s and 70s, okay? It doesn't work today, okay? And the reason why is these coaches need to know that you'll be able to handle the rigors of collegiate academics, okay? And how they know this is GPA and your entrance exams, SAT or ACT, okay? That paints the picture for them to know that they're comfortable enough that you're going to stay eligible for your entire career if you stay at school for that duration. And they don't have to sit on you. They don't have to keep you in study hall every night. They don't have to follow you around to your classes and get your progress reports, even though they're going to do it anyway. But they just do not like having to make sure somebody's eligible all the time. They want that young man or young lady to come into the program with the foundation of academics that are going to translate into the collegiate world, and they'll be able to be successful academically in college as well. Because, Sean, as you and I both know, you don't have mom and dad sitting there over your shoulder every night telling you to do your homework when you get in college. A lot of this is self-motivated, and in my case, it was out of fear, okay, because I was afraid of that old man back at home if I made a bad grade.
Which is okay. which is okay once in a while. Fear can be a great motivator.
It sure can. It sure can. But yeah,
So
man,
Larry,
academics
I
are
was going to say, no doubt. And I always say, you want options, you go to a restaurant, you got a menu with all the options. But if you're only going to spend $20, you're not going to a steakhouse that costs $100 for your steak. It's the same thing here. You limit options. You want to go to Stanford? You want to go to Northwestern? You want to go to Vanderbilt? You want to go? I can name a million other. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of good. It's what you put in is what you'll get out, no matter where you go. Number one, but you want to go to those schools. You know, you miss one day of class there, or you're not dedicated. That's like missing a month of high school. I mean,
right.
it is the demands are there. And if you're not a self-starter, you better learn to be one and discipline yourself while you're in high school before you get where you're not having a babysitter sitting over you all the time. All right, Larry, what is if you had a dream scenario for recruiting timeline, because you're so passionate about it and there are pitfalls with it as well, what would it be, whether you're telling this to the athlete or the universities or bring them together? What's the one big pet peeve that needs changed with the timeline?
Well, I'm going to deal with it from the athlete and the family point of view. If I'm communicating with them, stay off social media. Don't listen to what's being taught to you out there. You know, there are so many fallacies out there about the recruiting timeline. Talk to somebody who understands that, who's in this every single day. And, you know, again, with the NCAA, just clear up the clutter, man. Make sure that everybody's on the same page. You know, I really liked when they did away with the recruiting timeline for D2. I just think that was so beneficial. You know, and again, as I said earlier, I would like to see the contact period move back a little bit earlier in female sports to match up with some of the other sports as well. I just think it helps to define that athlete's ponds that they need to be fishing in a lot earlier. And it takes away a lot of unnecessary stress that athlete's going to have by sitting there waiting on that September 1st thing. If they get it, if they know earlier that the D1's not their pond to fish in, then they'll go out there and they'll start to focus and get and develop those relationships with those D2, D3 NAIA schools that have been hopefully talking to them early in this process.
Larry, in the couple minutes we have left, I want to go back to the social media thing and explain it, because you'll get a family when you say, hey, get off social media. Yet a lot of people believe that's where I get recruited. So they're on there all the time, sending videos, music videos, all the things, showing their stuff on there with their buddies, retweeting their stuff. Where's the line? We tell them, get off social media and quit believing in some of the stuff, because a lot of it's ridiculous information. Yet we need you on social media so coaches are seeing you. Where's the fine line?
Well, there is the correct way and there is the incorrect way. The incorrect way, you brought up points on it right there. Don't send me your huddle link that has watch this, you know, and like you're watching the old Batman show, bow, bam, you know.
It's called onomatopoeia. That's what that stuff's called. Boom, bang, yes, 100%. No onomatopoeia on your video.
I don't want to hear your music. I'm sorry. I'm hitting the mute button. Okay, I'm watching the plays. So, you know, it's cool and it's hip and all this. These kids see other kids doing this and they think that it's the right thing to do. It's not. Coaches zone out on that stuff. But there is a right way to do it. If you're going to post your stuff to social media, I think a coach wants to see, you know, some current information, but that coach wants to see the person that you are more than anything. They're not going to use social media as an evaluation tool. They're going to look at game film. They're going to look at measurements and metrics. They're going to get to that when they're deciding if you're the right fit for their program. Then they're going to start looking at your social media, and it needs to show them who you are. Okay. So there is a correct path to that. There's a correct path to that. Social media is good in certain ways, but social media can be just as damaging just as quickly as it can be good.
And a little off the beaten path, but has to do with recruiting. I could tell you this in talking to coaches all along and seeing it. You want to eliminate yourself from a team's, we see it all the time. Go on there and retweet something that you would put it this way. If your mom, your sister, your grandma, you wouldn't show it to them. Don't retweet anything. Don't post it. Don't hit send. I mean, it's such a, it's ruined college lives and the rest of it. So be wise about the way you approach it. And that's what Larry, and I know this for a fact, you'll have coaches all the time. If they go there, no matter how good a player you are, and see bad character, you're done. They will wipe you off their recruiting list as quick as possible until maybe you prove to them it was a mistake. But don't get caught up in the laughs from your buddies in order to cost you a scholarship, because usually the laughs from your buddies aren't the ones who are getting recruited. So make
Exactly.
sure you're choosing wisely. So I'll end with this, Larry. Is there too much that a kid can do as far as information for the coach? Male, female, doesn't matter. Is there too much you can do when it comes to sending too much tape, sending too much information, too much about how you're growing? And when you're a fresh, let's say when you're a freshman, is there too much you can flood these coaches with where they say, enough, dude, I get the point? Or is more better in that case?
That's again, it's sports specific. Certain sports are not video driven, but certain sports are certainly video driven, where coaches want to track progress. Um,
Right.
they want to see the difference between your freshman year and your sophomore year film. Okay, to track progress. Um, but I want to give them snippets of information where the coach can ask you for full game highlights of something, a soccer player, where they can see you working off the ball, what you're doing off the ball, and see full game highlights. Same thing in basketball. It's very important to know what the athlete's doing off the ball, but send them just enough information where it piques their curiosity, where they want to reach back out to you to get that full game footage so you can provide it for them in that. And that gets you in the process. Okay. Highlight reels are just that. They're highlight reels. They're going to pique the coach's curiosity where he wants to dig in and get more. Okay. But wait for him to tell you what is more. Send him the proper 3 to 5 minutes of good highlights, and then let him tell you what he wants you to send him.
And about that too, Larry, you make such a good point. Basketball player, wide receiver, just a couple things is, don't just show them you dunking and playing on one end if you're a basketball player. I personally, you roll through it in college coaches from Frank Martin to Bob Huggins to guys that are friends to talk to. I just assume see you off the ball as a perimeter defender. I mean, when you got a perimeter defend away from the ball, or if you're playing the guy that's covering on when he's on the dribble, can he take you off the dribble, and how you move your feet and how you come off picks? Don't just show me the end result like they do on Sports Center where you're dunking at the end. Show me the pass. Show me the pass that got you there. And in a sport like football, receivers catching, going over the middle, not just outside the numbers, but also I love to see how you block. Because if you
Yes.
don't block, I got to get you out during runs. I got the biggest plays in sports and running games happen down the field when they're plus 10 runs aren't because of a lineman getting down the field. Now that always helps. It's because you shielding somebody, and that goes a long way with me. And talking to coaches, they want to know, are you unselfish? Are you a little whiner when you're not getting the football? Think Hines Ward when you think about that. Off the ball, if he wasn't getting it, he could still impact the game and impact other coaches' eyes while he was blocking. And at times, even more so. So you want a point guard who doesn't score. Jason Kidd was great at this. Point guard, get you 18 assists, play defense, scores 3 points, you still win. What do you think that coach is thinking? Oh, he doesn't have to take over just putting the ball in the basket. He can dominate a game away, as can receivers, as can perimeter defenders, as can guys who block out even if you don't get the rebound under the defensive, or how do you do on the offensive glass? Even if you're not the one getting the putback, you're the one who's preventing that guy from getting a defensive rebound. All those things come into play. Make sure they see your best stuff, and the timeline, milk it as much as you can the right way. Correct,
Right.
Larry?
Absolutely. Michael Jordan was a highlight reel, human highlight reel. But what people don't realize was he may have been one of the best defensive players in the league's history. And he set things up with movement off the ball to set up his team for easy baskets, that sort of thing. So that's the effort part about it. Do you run out your fake after you play action? Are you booting out like you're supposed to keep the
Carrying
eyes
it
of
out,
linemen
yes.
on you? What are you doing after without the ball? And body language. Oh my goodness, that's huge as well. Because if you're looking up in the stands and cheering with the cheerleaders, college coaches don't want that. You said something about social media too, Sean. These young people making these fatal errors on social media by posting or sharing the wrong stuff. Um, you know, college coaches, when a coach is recruiting you, he's basically giving you license to represent that institution. Okay. So they, again, once you get into college, they do not want you to do stupid things to shed a bad light on that brand. Okay. So if you're doing it in high school, your propensity to do that in college is there. And coaches don't want to deal with that, just like they don't want to deal with keeping you eligible. Same thing.
And just to put an exclamation point, not only on this show, and great stuff by Larry, is with that Michael Jordan thing. He was a all defensive first team 7-8 times. He was also the defensive player of the year the same year he was the MVP. And a guy who used to do their games for 20 years, there's a friend of mine, broadcast their games. He said, Sean, when you go to practice, when Michael decided you weren't getting a shot off, and you're talking about against the Pippins, the Steve Kerrs, a team that's won a whole bunch of championships, he dominates you defensively. And he told me, and he'd been in basketball and played it for years, said, and you watch Jordan, he said, he's the best defensive player in the world and maybe the best defensive player at all time. We know Michael and dunks and all the other stuff. Michael Jordan's even more respect came from his refusal to lose. Not that his want to win, his refusal to lose. And that started with the way you played on the place that travels in every sport,
right?
Defense. And he decided that was going to be it. And practice was just as important to him as playing. And quite frankly, it was a pipeline that led them to winning because he practiced like he played. Larry, great stuff, man. To Brett, our producer, is the best in the business. All the great stuff you see had nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with him. We appreciate him, NSR, and this is Recruiting Unfiltered, Executive Director. You get him here every week of NSR, Larry Perrin, long time experience, talks to coaches every day, and there's nobody better at doing it. And I'm Sean Salisbury. Grateful to be here. We'll do it again next week. Share it with your friends. Like and subscribe right there on YouTube. It is Recruiting Unfiltered, and we're grateful to be a part of it. See you next week.